the Howard attempt to close off the week during which there's a flood of people getting onto the rolls without being properly checked. Howard introduced legislation, and it was in for a number of years, in which when the election is announced, the rolls close, whereas the High Court insisted that the rolls be kept open for a week, and during that week the electoral system is flooded with a tsunami of attempts to enrol, and of course none of these are checked. They can't be checked. This is the way in which you can target seats where a very small number of votes could swing the vote, particularly with preferential voting. You can't do that in a referendum. It's too big. You'd have to do it for a whole state. The principal electorate for a referendum is the whole country, but then you get 6 electorates as big as the states, and it's very hard to rush in a number of additional fake enrolments to swing an election. So electoral fraud is much more difficult in those. But you're absolutely right. This means that the Australian people are being cheated in terms of elections because they're not getting the governance they want. And
yes, and the result of this last referendum was of such a scale that in a society where people were not afraid of, where embarrassment was still possible in politicians, the Prime Minister should have resigned, or at least offered his resignation and gone for a re-election within the party. But he didn't. What he did was he immediately embarked on what he called a state visit to the United States. And by the way, it wasn't a state visit because he's not the head of state. And yet the Americans, not knowing anything about protocol, called it a state visit. And this was all about saving face. It was moving on from the disaster of the referendum. And then in order to balance his electorate at home, his left-wing urban electorate, he had to go to Beijing as well. And what did these visits achieve? Nothing of a great statesman-like quality. Yes, we are seeing progress with AUKUS, and that's likely to lead, I think, soon to the introduction of New Zealand under the new government as another member of AUKUS, which I think will be very beneficial. But what we're seeing is Albanese, like Biden, are kowtowing to Beijing because their immediate belief is that China is a major player in the world. It's a major player in the sense that it's unstable. That makes it very dangerous and unpredictable. But it's not a major contributor at this point going forward to Australia or the United States.